This is the Toss-Up, where we take a look at some of the topics facing the world of sports, and then we dive deeper. Whether it's your best friend's fantasy team or the future of college athletics, we're just trying to expand the conversation. We just want to take a look at the topics that keep you tuned in to the beautiful world of sports. We all heard the words breakthrough this past fall more times than we can count. And after the most anticipated home opener in program history, overtime against a blue blood, and leading a top 10 team for almost an entire game, Indiana football failed in its one goal of last year, to break through. Yes, health was an issue, and yes, there was a lot of youth. But it's Big Ten football, and teams everywhere battle through some sort of adversity. With last season in the rearview mirror and spring practice starting up, this year's team is looking to build off of last season. With a solid first recruiting class for Tom Allen and a slew of returning starters, this year should be full speed ahead for the Hoosiers. Hi everybody, I'm Michael Dugan, and joining me on the panel this week we've got IUS-TV football beat reporter Joe Canner, WIUX broadcaster Jack Grossman, and our very own IUS-TV sports co-director Austin Matricardi. Gentlemen, spring football is in the air. I know it was snowy the other day, but can we feel that spring football is in the air?
Absolutely, full steam ahead for the Hoosiers.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be better if the weather was nice, but yeah.
All right, so replacing leaders like T. Gray Scales and Richard Fant, that's going to be an enormous task for this year's team. How are they going to approach that?
I think it starts with another senior linebacker that's going to be coming in, Mike McGinnis. Tom Allen said he's been given a lot of opportunities in practice to try to win that job, and that's a key position. They're the quarterbacks on the defensive side of the ball. That's going to be essential if IU hopes to improve on last season's record of 5-7.
It's not going to be one or two guys that replace T. Gray Scales, Chris Covington, Richard Fant, three of the best players Indiana's had in its program in the 24th century, but it's going to take a collective group. I really a couple guys, Marcelino Ball and Jonathan Crawford, two returning guys that have been beasts during their careers at Indiana, and especially if they can stay healthy, will have a big impact this season.
I think that one guy, like Jack mentioned, that's going to be big is going to be Jonathan Crawford. He started every single game since he's been here in Bloomington. I think he's going to be a potential anchor for this defense at the safety position. But you also have to look on the other side of the ball at Wes Martin. Wes Martin was a captain of this team last year. I think that he'll continue on and he'll be a captain again this year, and I think he'll be crucial as an offensive leader for this team.
Now let's stick on that side of the ball. Simi Cobbs, Ian Thomas, both gone. How are they going to replace their production offensively?
Well, Nick Westbrook's got to be healthy. If Nick Westbrook is healthy, he is going to be IU's #1 receiver next year. I believe that wholeheartedly. I don't think you can replace a guy like Simi Cobbs straight up, but the receiving core, you lose Taysir Mack, you lose Devontae Graham out of the backfield, and as you mentioned, Simi Cobbs is gone. Nick Westbrook was supposed to be the #2 to Simi's #1 last year. Now it's his time to lead. It's his core.
Well, it's kind of like we're alternating years. Odd years, Sydney, even years, Westbrook, because Cobbs was hurt all of 2016, and Westbrook, you said no one can really fill in for Cobbs, but Westbrook did about as good a job you were going to do 2 years ago. Almost broke 1,000 receiving yards, had a really great year. If he can stay healthy, that'd be huge. Donovan Hale comes back from injury. Also, he had a good season last year. Also, got for Watt Billier. He came out of nowhere late in the year last season. Can be a really good slot guy for the Hoosiers.
Yeah, like these guys said with those receivers, Hale, Westbrook coming back, they're going to be big. Then you look at tight end, you've got Ryan Watercutter, probably going to be the starter this year. He got some experience last year after earning a scholarship as a walk-on. But another big piece at tight end is going to be Peyton Hendershot. He was a 3-star prospect coming out of North Salem. He played in 4 games last year before getting hurt, and he got a medical red shirt. So Hendershot is a big 6'4" target. I think that he's going to be good for this offense too.
Now, the running backs last year as a group, they struggled. They were inconsistent. There was a lot of youth there. The running back group was kind of by committee. The offensive line was not what it was in years past. How do they look this spring, and what can we expect from them production-wise or personnel-wise this fall?
Well, I mean, you have Morgan Ellison coming back, and he had a really good freshman year. He struggled against better competition, but that's a lot odd because Indiana just got manhandled on the offensive line like they do almost every year, because that's, even though they had strong years under Wilson, it's hard for Indiana to keep those bodies coming in to be able to sustain that for a long period of time. But I think Ellison's going to have another strong year. You're really built off that freshman year, have a strong sophomore season. Looking at Ronnie Walker as well, the freshman, the jewel of this recruiting class, one of the highest ranked guys Indiana's gotten in a long time. He'll be good. And then Well, yeah, add someone like a Cole Guest, a speedy back who can be a nice change of pace, third down back type of thing, can catch the ball out of the backfield and really help Indiana in the passing game out of the backfield.
Yeah, I mean, the running back room looks a little bit different this year. Tyler Nate transferred, Devontae Williams transferred, Alex Rodriguez made the decision to forego his senior season and graduate early. So, looking at those guys, obviously, Jack, you mentioned a few of the key guys. One that I'm looking at kind of as a sleeper is Craig Nelson. He's a redshirt freshman, redshirted last year. He was a 3-star recruit out of Miami. Good guy, really productive at Booker T. Washington High School. And he was one of the last guys recruited by Deland McCullough, who was one of the great running backs coach here at Indiana for so many years.
Yeah, these guys hit the nail on the head. I think it's going to be competition. It's what's going to be different this year. Ronnie Walker, when you've got a guy like that coming in, he is going to push everyone to step up their game. Morgan Ellison had a nice freshman season, but as you mentioned, struggled against better competition. If he wants to have a hold on that starting job, he is going to have to improve. We're going to have to see if Mike Majette wants any share of the ball carrying at all. He's going to have to improve. Cole Guest, same. Ronnie Walker is going to push these guys forward. And I think competition is going to help move these running backs in the right direction.
That's like the story of Indiana football, though. Yeah, they struggle against bigger teams, but they can
beat up on Charleston Southern and Georgia Southern.
Yeah, maybe Maryland, and even though they lost to Maryland last year and Rutgers, but you got to find guys who can be able to stand up to the Ohio States, Michigan State, and Penn States, who, of course, Indiana has to play every year in the Big Ten East. Got to love balanced divisions, but that's Indiana's problem. They got to find guys like Nate Sudfeld in the past, Tevin Coleman, Jordan Howard, Sidney Cobbs, who can perform against the top levels in the Big Ten.
Yeah, Joe, and I mean, you were talking about competition, and I think that's a big thing for running backs coach Mike Hart. In the past, he's talked frequently about how nobody's guaranteed a starting spot. You have to come and you have to work every single day, and you have to prove that you're better and that you deserve playing time. And, I think that's a big part of this running back stable. They're going to have to come in and, they have a lot of very talented players, so they're going to have to compete if they want to get on the field.
Yeah, I don't think that was necessarily the case last year. They had to put someone out there, and none of the running backs available were really stepping up. Now I think one of them will, and look for someone. It's going to be running back by committee at the beginning, but I really think someone, whether it be Ellison, whether it be Walker, whether it be Cole Guest, is going to come out and distance themselves between the pack a little bit.
All right, well, we're going to jump to break real quick, but coming up after the break, we're going to discuss the future of this team and dive into the specifics of what we could expect next year. So stick with us. Welcome back to the Toss-Up. We're talking IU football, but before we continue and talk about the future of the program, let's toss it to Joe Canner at the media wall. Joe?
Thanks, Michael. The 2018 Indiana football team will experience a changing of the guard. With a program record 5 Hoosiers participating in the NFL Combine, Tom Allen's team has major question marks going forward, and some of those holes likely to be filled by some young up-and-comers in this year's freshman class. We're going to start with the quarterback, Mike Penix, dual-threat left-hander. And here we're going to show you what makes him so valuable. He's got a live arm on this one. He's able to evade tacklers, put just enough elevation on the ball to make the play. He's also incredibly shifty in the backfield, avoiding sacks. Most quarterbacks, when you're faced with several defenders coming at him like Penix is here, would just take the sack. Instead, he's going to spin, evade tacklers somehow, and then make the play all the way for a touchdown. That's why he was the Tampa Bay Times Offensive Player of the Year. Next, I want to talk to you guys about the running back position. It was a stable of running backs this year for Indiana, and that was a problem. Ronnie Walker could change that. He's one of the best recruits IU has had in several years. Big, strong guy, home run power with the same speed, not just power. He's a north-south runner, not busy being all this shiftiness going east and west. He can find the space wherever it is and make the play for the home run every time. That's going to be key for Tom Allen's backfield. Last but not least, on the defensive side of the ball, the Tampa Bay Times Defensive Player of the Year. I'm talking about James Miller. He was lured away from Florida State. Let me show you why Tom Allen's crew were so easy to get their hands on him. He's always eager to get his hands on the quarterback. Great tackler in open space, something that Indiana is going to be missing now that Tigray Scales and Chris Covington are gone due to the NFL draft. James Miller going to have to fill the key left by those guys just like he's filling the holes that the offensive line gives him. Michael, back to you.
Thanks, Joe. Always good to have Joe over at the media wall talking a little bit of X's and Joes, if you will. All right, gentlemen. So the QB situation, Joe touched on it a little bit over at the media wall. It's going to be a little interesting this year because there's a lot of youth and there's Peyton Ramsey coming back. This is a segment we're going to call Make Your Case. So each of you make your case for someone at the quarterback position to start this year for Indiana.
I'll make the case for Peyton Ramsey. Why not? He's got the most experience of anyone, and I know he didn't shine all the time last year. He was great against lower competition, struggled a little bit when he had to play the big boys in the Big Ten. But let me tell you why Peyton Ramsey should be the starting quarterback next year. Experience and familiarity. This is a young team. IU does not have a lot of guys coming back. Ramsey's one of those guys that have played against teams like Penn State, teams like Michigan in the Big Ten. That's going to be key. These young guys have not faced competition like that. Ramsey is one of the few guys with experience. I think he can add a sense of camaraderie to this team. He won the locker room last year away from Richard Lego. Why not give it to Ramsey? Open up the playbook. Mike DeBoer really limited what he was allowed to do last year. If you give him the reins, if you give him the team, I think Peyton Ramsey's your guy.
Well, I mean, there's a reason why Mike DeBoer limited Peyton Ramsey so much last year. Because he didn't have enough faith that he could do anything more than what he was being asked to do. I mean, Peyton Ramsey had a great shot last year to really take over the reins, be the guy moving forward. And yes, he had good games against a Maryland or a Charleston Southern. But at the end of the day, if you're Indiana, you've got to be able to win enough games to be in contention to go bowling. And Ramsey didn't win enough. He didn't win enough. He didn't put up good stats. And yes, you're playing top defenses in Michigan State, Penn State, and all that, but Ramsey had a great chance last year, and he didn't fully take advantage of it, in my point of view. So I'm looking at Mike Penix coming in as a new guy, highly touted, is the most athletic of the bunch, is probably the most pure talented of the bunch. Why not just throw him in the fire and see what he can do? You get some easier games in the non-conference schedule just to try to figure things out a little bit. Why not just let the guy get some experience and see maybe, hey, he's the best raw athlete of the three of them. He has the best arm of the three of them. Why not give him a chance?
Yeah, I mean, you two, you've talked about experience. You've talked about youth and talent. Why don't we just take those things, mash them together, and we get Nick Tronti, redshirt freshman out of Florida. He was the 2016 Florida Mr. Football, one of the biggest awards in the for high school football. Florida is one of the greatest states for high school football, and he was the best player in that state that year. You look at him, he's a dual threat just like Penix, just like Ramsey. He's got a better arm than Ramsey. He's got more experience than Penix because he's a redshirt freshman. He spent the entire season last season on the scout team. He was named the 2017 Offensive Scout Team Player of the Year. That's probably the best redshirt year you can possibly have as a quarterback. So you look at the tape of Tronti, he's a dynamic player. He can do it all. I think that he should be the starter for Indiana next season.
I do think it's the biggest question mark that Tom Allen has with this football team. And there's a lot of question marks on this football team. Let's not be confused with 53 freshmen and sophomores on the roster. The quarterback position is the most important position in sports. There's just no way to get around that. And you have three guys who are all very similar and need to show if one of them can distance themselves. And if Tom Allen doesn't make the right choice on this, no matter who it ends up being, that could really derail any hopes Indiana has, slim as they may be, of getting back to a bowl this year.
Yeah, you could go, Joe.
I was just going to say, that's the only argument why I have against Penix. If you have any hope of getting to a bowl game, I don't think the raw athlete, pure freshman, you don't throw him into the fire like that. If you're conceding that, there's just too much youth, we're not looking to succeed this year, although they're never going to come out and say that, then Penix is your guy because then he gets the most experience. But Ramsey can come in and win these games. He beat Virginia last year. You mentioned the easy games in the non-conference. If you throw Penix in there against a team like Virginia, who is up and coming, they made a bowl game last year, you're pretty much conceding that game. There's tough games in the Big Ten. I think if you're trying to win this year, which Tom Allen's going to have to do, his contract's only so long, I think Peyton Ramsey's your guy.
Is there any legitimate chance that Indiana makes a bowl game this year, though?
There's always a chance.
I mean, technically, yes, there's a chance. But,
so you're saying there's a chance?
But I would be very highly surprised if Indiana was in a bowl game this year. So I'm not saying it's conceding and saying, okay, we're going to throw Penix in there and just see what he can do. But I don't know if long-term Mike Penix or even Nick Tronti are better long-term answers, I think, than Peyton Ramsey. And if you're going to do that long-term, you can't just throw away the long process to try to salvage one season that might not be worth saving.
Yeah, and unfortunately, that's the brutal honesty of being in the Big Ten East, the fact that Indiana has to play the teams that they do every single season, it makes it hard to get to a bowl game, harder than it would be if they were, say, in the Big Ten West. So you obviously want to go out there and you want to try to get to a bowl game, but sometimes it just isn't a reality.
I mean, Ramsey is only a redshirt sophomore. He's not like a senior, junior, not even an upperclassman yet. So he's got a little bit of youth as well. I think it's going to be a two-horse race between Ramsey and Tronti. I don't think they're going to throw Penix into the fire. But long-term, I agree with you. He has the most raw talent of any of them.
All right, guys, let's stay in the backfield here. I know I asked you earlier what you think they're going to look like, the running backs, that is. What would you do if you're Mike DeBoer or Tom Allen with the running backs this year?
Well, if I'm Coach Mike Hart, what I'm recommending is you give Morgan Ellison the chance to step up. He's going to be my feature back, and you give Ronnie Walker the touches he deserves because he is a gem. And then my third down back, I'm going to go with Mike Majette. He can catch passes. He can also get you a few yards in short yardage situations. So I think he gives you that versatility that you want from a third down back. But long term, I'm going Morgan Ellison and I'm going Ronnie Walker, maybe 60-40 split.
If I had to choose one guy to ride right now, I would choose Morgan Ellison with Ronnie Walker not far behind. But I like what you said the last part of that there, Joe, with the 60-40 split. I might go even closer than that, maybe a 55-45 of Ellison, just getting a slight majority over Walker just because he's a big bruiser. He has a better chance of holding up throughout a long season. And then I'd go Cole Guest out of the backfield for that third down back spot because he has that speed, change of pace guy who can catch the ball out of the backfield and really make plays happen on third down, whether it be a halfback screen or a little swing pass. Just trying to run routes out of the backfield, Guest is probably Indiana's best option.
So we've got Morgan Ellison and Morgan Ellison. I'd like to quote the great Lee Corso here, not so fast, my friends. Gotta be Ronnie Walker. He's the best recruit Indiana's had in a decade. He's shown that he has the natural talent. It might not be day one where he comes in and he's the starter, but by the end of this season, he will be the workhorse for this team because that's the kind of talent he has. Morgan Ellison does deserve to have carries because he's got talent in his own right, and he produced well last season, but I think that Walker should be featured. Ellison maybe gets like a 40% share of the touches, and then you get Cole Guest on third downs because he's an explosive back. He's got a lot of speed. In spring practice, he hit over 21 miles per hour in practice. That's wild. That's really, really fast. So you get him out in speed, you get him out on the edge, let him catch a few passes, see if he can take off. So I think that that's what Indiana's going to look like this upcoming season at the running back position.
All right, time for the lightning round. You guys know the rules. Joe, you don't know the rules. There's one rule. It's your answer has to be 10 seconds or less. I'll give you 4 questions. First question, offense, defense, and special teams for these questions. MVP of this year.
My MVP is Nick Westbrook. I think he comes back. I think he has a phenomenal year coming back from injury. You mentioned the 1,000-yard year he had 2 years ago. I think he's going to produce that and then some in the receiving core. A receiving core with not much consistency. You've got some recruits coming in. You've still got Whop Philyor. But Nick Westbrook's going to really shine on this team regardless of who the quarterback is.
Marcelino Ball, there was a huge difference in that defense last year after he got hurt, only played 3 games, had a monster freshman year. He's going to have a really good junior season in that Husky position.
Jonathan Crawford's my guy. He's a senior. He could be the anchor of the defense. He's a 4-year starter, MVP.
Breakout player, who's it going to be?
Whop Philyor. He broke out a little bit last year. I want to see a legitimate number 2 receiver in Whop Philyor.
Ronnie Walker, most heralded recruit Indiana's gotten in a long time, and he's going to really help out that running back position.
I look back at safety. I think that either Juwan Burgess or Bryant Fitzgerald is the guy. They're both great athletes, and they're going to get more playing time in that secondary this year.
Jack, earlier you said there are a lot of these. What is the single biggest question mark or uncertainty that needs to be addressed this spring and this summer for this team?
It's identity. Big picture thing. Last year, the team did not have an identity offensively or defensively, and defense was supposed to be their calling card. You need to establish a culture and an identity. What's your strong suit? What's your weaknesses? And then work on fixing your weaknesses. I just want to see an identity out of Tom Allen's team.
That's a great one. If I hadn't thought of that earlier, I would use that. But quarterbacks, it's the most important position on the field in any sport, and Indiana does not have a surefire quarterback right now, short-term or long-term.
Yeah, Joe went like all deep and stuff on us, but it's quarterback for me too. Important position. There's no clear-cut starter. That's the biggest question mark for me.
All right, assuming health, obviously this is impossible to predict. So assuming health, what is this team's realistic ceiling this year?
I think the realistic ceiling is 6-6. You look at that schedule, it's daunting, especially with a lot of young talent. I see 6 games that IU can win. I'm not sure they're going to win them all, but a bowl game is their ceiling.
I don't know. I think it's going to be a rough year for Indiana football. I really do. It's they lose so many pieces on defense I think 5-7 is their ceiling.
I'm going to go 6-6. Obviously, everything would have to work out perfectly for this team. That's the definition of a ceiling, though. So 6-6 for me.
All right. Well, as we end the near of our discussion, it's time for last words. So what is everybody's last word on this upcoming season for IU football?
Finish. I hope they can finish. I hope they can get a few just maybe even one. Just give me one signature win if you're Tom Allen, and that will have me believing that Indiana football is on the right path to a bright future.
Just believe. Just try to get some belief into the football program that, hey, Tom Allen is the guy and they can move forward and be a respectable program for really, other than a 2-year stint in the last couple of years, for the first time in 25 years.
My one word is going to be youth. Look at this team, like Jack mentioned earlier, you've got 53 freshmen and sophomores. There's a lot of young talent on this team. So let's see if, maybe one of those guys can break out. Maybe 3 or 4 of those guys can break out and establish themselves as key players for this Hoosier team.
Youth is a good one. And I think that kind of has to do with my last word, which is chance. Give Tom Allen a chance. Jack, like you said, 53 freshmen and sophomores, underclassmen on this team. They don't have an identity right now, but a lot of these pieces, especially offensively, are young guys that this team's going to have to build around going forward if they want to succeed. So that's my last word, is chance. Give this team a chance. All right, well, that'll do it for the show this week, but be sure to continue the discussion on our Twitter page at IUSTV Sports and on Facebook at IUSTV Sports. You can always give any suggestions for the show and ask any questions you might have. Toss it up. Find out if we'll catch it. We'll see you next time.